Hi, today we're going to take a look at a Bembo tripod and a Uni-loc tripod. And the reason we're doing this is I've just come into possession of these two and I've now got to sell them. But it just reminded me all about Bembo tripods. I would say in the 1980s every bird photographer seemed to own a Bembo tripod. They were extremely popular. I didn't use them for bird photography. I preferred to use a standard style tripod, but I did have a Bembo for photographing macro type work, flowers and fungi and insects and things. I didn't like them for big telephotos, but most bird photographers did. Now, it was a long time ago, the 1980s, 1990s, but as I remember it, a man who designed these, and I don't know whether he worked for Bembo or is one of the directors, I've no idea now, I can't actually remember that far back, but he left the company and he started to make the Uni-loc tripods, and this would have been in the early 1990s. So it's a very similar design. Uni-loc website claims they were improved. I can't really see the improvement, they're much the same. And I seem to remember there was some controversy because of the patent that Bembo had, but I think it got sorted out, and for a number of years the Uni-loc and Bembo were being sold side by side, and Uni-loc were connected to Jessops, the retailer, somehow as well. But anyway, today, although there's still a Uni-loc website, you don't seem to be able to buy them. You follow the links on that website to try and buy them, you won't find them, and they're not for sale on Amazon or eBay or anything. But Bembos, you can still buy a Bembo. They're still made in the UK, in the Midlands, and extremely well engineered bit of kit, and very different to a normal tripod. So first of all, what's the main advantages of them? Well, totally different to any other tripod. The legs are sort of in reverse, so that the bottom section of the leg is the thicker and the upper sections are thinner, exactly the opposite way around to any other tripod. So when we extend the leg, this is the thick part down the bottom and the thin part up the top, and the great advantage of that is it keeps it clean. When you're putting your tripod up in water, mud or sand, it's all on the outside of the lower leg and keeps the sliding mechanism clean. And this has always been a big problem with me with tripods. I use my gear a lot, I don't look after it, it does get in very dirty, muddy situations, and eventually I find that the locking mechanisms on them seize up. And there's a number of tripods over the years that I've thrown away because of this, or one very expensive Gitzo that I had for, well, at least a decade. Every 2 or 3 years I'd have to have it serviced, where they'd strip it down completely and get all the grit out of the locking mechanisms. So these are much easier to keep clean in really dirty situations. The other big advantage is each leg can be adjusted separately. Now, you'll hear people say that they're very difficult to use, very complicated, that you need a degree in engineering to be able to use one of these. Well, that's a joke, and we all used to make that joke. It's a bit of an exaggeration. They're not that difficult to use. You've just got this one center locking handle here, which you lock it up with, and then you undo it, and you just adjust the legs as you want them. And when you've put it down on the floor and get your legs just right, you lock it up. The center column slides up and down, but if you undo that main center locking grip there, you can adjust it. Let's turn it the other way around. And each leg, of course, is then adjustable for its length, and it means you can put it up in very awkward situations, especially if you're working on rocks at the seaside where it's very uneven. You can put this up in almost any position. So that's two of its great advantages. It also then just goes down very, very low. You can get it right down to ground level very easily. That's always been very popular with bird photographers. But then the other great advantage of them is we could get the tripod head and the camera very low down to the ground. You undo this central locking lever and we can lower the camera right down here on the end of a ball and socket head. Now, there was an extra complication to get the camera level. You've really either had to have a second ball and socket on there, which would then work, you could get it vertically, or you had to have the camera upside down. I do seem to remember that was a bit of a nuisance, but now you could have the camera right down to the floor, but it would be upside down, which doesn't affect you photographically. You still get a perfectly good picture. But when Uni-loc came along, they introduced this extra little bit down here, which meant you could be down at the floor and still have your camera the right way up. Otherwise everything was much the same. Now I've looked on the Bembo website, the current website, and there's no mention of this, so perhaps it was just a Uni-loc feature, but that did make a big difference. You can solve it with the Bembo by putting a second ball and socket on there, but that is much better. So there we have it, extremely versatile, very well engineered tripods, very useful for doing that sort of nature type photography where you've got to get into awkward positions. I still own a Uni-loc tripod, doesn't get a lot of use today, especially outdoors. When I do use it, it tends to be indoors when I'm doing what I'm going to call sort of tabletop photography. I make most of my living these days from selling things online retailing. So I have to photograph the products that we sell, usually with a white background. And when you've got something on a table, on a white background, it's much easier to be able to set your tripod up like this by the side of the table and then just adjust this center arm with the camera over here and get on top of the subject you're trying to photograph. So that's about the main use I make of it today, but then I don't really do flower and macro photography like I used to. Thanks for watching.